So welcome everyone to the panel, to our panel. It's called People-to-People Partnership, Advancing Education and Skills Development. We have an illustrious set of people today with us. We are fortunate. So I start with introducing Nancy. So Nancy Edzo-Jackson is the Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, where she supports the Assistant Secretary in formulating and implementing US-India policy. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you.
We have with us today my dear friend, Devyani Rajalakshmi Rana. She is the Vice President, Public Affairs, Communications and Sustainability for India and Southwest Asia for Coca-Cola. Welcome, Devyani. Welcome. The third panelist is Ms. Jill Kouri. She is the Chief Marketing Officer at HCLTech, and I'll spend a second here because HCLTech is doing such marvelous work in the United States. It's an India-headquartered multinational IT services and technology company. It invests heavily in skilling workers in North and South America. Almost 60% of your workforce is based here. Is that correct?
60%
in the region.
60% of our revenues in the region, about
Right.
14% of our workforce.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. So welcome, everyone. Nancy, let's start with you. So you have referenced the role of the private sector in the educational, in fostering the partnership between India and the US. So can you please expand on why this is important and what it might look like?
Sure, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today and to be with the panelists here. Maybe I'll just start by a little bit of framing on what we're doing in the education sector and where we see the private sector playing a role. First and foremost, I just want to say how excited we all are that we will be welcoming Prime Minister Modi next week to the White House for an official state visit. Very excited what it will mean for the US-India relationship. I think it will be taking it to the next level. And when we look at that visit, Ambassador Garcetti, our ambassador in India, has a wonderful way of framing all of the initiatives that we are working with India on, especially as it relates to this visit. And he talks about it in terms of the 4 Ps. The first one being peace, and that really gets to our defense partnership. The second one is prosperity, and in that we're really looking at all of the education and the commercial and private sector engagements that we have with India. The third one is the planet, and that really is about what we're doing in terms of clean energy and environmental issues and how we think about climate change. And then the fourth one is people. And it's the people-to-people ties that really undergird this relationship. And it is that 4th P, excuse me, that I want to talk about because that's where our education work resides. And I really think that the people-to-people ties of the US-India relationship are truly the bedrock of this relationship. We've had very strong people-to-people ties even when relations haven't been as great as they are now. That is really driven by a very vibrant diaspora, 4 million plus strong. We also are proud to have over 200,000 Indian students at American universities. And so we really do have a firm foundation on the people, but quite honestly, we kind of feel that's only scratching the surface. There's so much more we could be doing, particularly in the education and skills development arena. And so it was because of that that the US and India launched just a few weeks ago a new US-India Higher Education and Skills Development Working Group. And really, this platform is designed to not only identify the opportunities that maybe we're not taking as much advantage of as we could, but also to break down the barriers that are in any way inhibiting greater cooperation in the education and skills development arena. And so that working group has 4 committees working on kind of 4 lines of effort. The first one is skills development and vocational education. Vocational education, we think, is a really untapped piece of the education equation that we would like to further develop with India. The second one is certification and recognition. This really gets to shared recognition and acknowledgement of certificates and certifications that our respective workforce has. The third one is partnerships between US and Indian higher education institutions. And the fourth one is engagement with the private sector. And that's where kind of all of you come in. So while the private sector really has equities in all four of those work streams, I would say I would really like to focus a little bit on one particular aspect where we really do want to partner with the private sector, and we think the private sector can make tremendous contributions. And that is, how do we build the next generation of our India experts? You know, we have a lot of Indian students here in the United States. We don't have as many American students going to India. So, for example, pre-COVID, there were less than 4,000 Americans studying in India. So who is going to be the next generation of Indian experts that can drive this growing and vibrant relationship, and also the commercial and private sector and economic ties that we have? And so we really would like to see that number increase in order to really reach the full potential of this relationship. And so we saw even in China, when China started opening up in the 80s, philanthropy, the philanthropic organizations, the diaspora communities, the private sector played a major role in really opening up that country and in supporting education, Americans going to China to learn about China, whether that was supporting scholarships or programs. And so we really need your help in terms of grooming and energizing kind of the next generation of Americans who really will understand India, its culture, its language, its economics, its history, to be those advisors and change agents in the private sector and in the business world that can identify those opportunities and take advantage of them. So how can you get involved? Well, consider supporting an exchange program, a short-term familiarization study program, a study abroad program, any kind of exchange programs. Also partner with Indian universities, the IITs, to develop programs that will attract students to those critical areas of study where we have a lot of demand, whether that is in engineering or whether that's in environmental science, computer science, STEM, whatever it is. But we think there's growth there as well. And then the last thing I would suggest is our Department of Commerce colleagues have an agreement with the Indian Ministry of Commerce and Industry to launch a new talent, innovation, and inclusive growth working group. This fits under the US-India Commercial Dialogue. And this Talent, Innovation, and Inclusive Growth Working Group is very much a nice companion and complementary to the work of the working group that the State Department is leading. This one is really focusing on business and partnering with business to do the upskilling and training that private sector needs to build the workforce of the future. And so there's another great opportunity. They want to do all of their work in partnership with the private sector. So those are three concrete areas, I think, that can really benefit from the expertise of the private sector. And maybe last, before I turn it back to you, I will just highlight two great examples of this in action, but I want to stress they're just two of many that we have, and hope to have many more. The first one is Tata Consulting has funded PhD scholarships in key fields like computer sciences with Cornell in New York. And then also, we've just had Purdue University in Indiana announce a new partnership with the government of India to create online and hybrid programs on semiconductors. And the real purpose of this will be to provide specialized training and explore joint degrees and research and development in semiconductors. I think those are two great examples of where we could go.
Thank you very much, Nancy. That was a very crisp framing of not only the educational partnership, but also the working group on education and skills development. Thank you very much. Devyani, so what are some of the skills that you see emerge in the Indian market now? And what are some of your initiatives to get ahead in this regard?
Thank you, Shreerupa. Good morning and namaskar to all of you. It's wonderful to be here. And just before the Prime Minister's visit, it's even more exciting. I actually just wanted to take off from what you just said, Nancy. the kind of work that is being done in India in the last 10 to 14 years has been incredible, especially in terms of the skill development program done not by just by the Ministry of Human Resources and Development, but by the National Skill Development Corporation. If you look at the sectors, I think we have some, in terms of the technical sectors, there's a lot of impetus which has been given. But if I look at the, the sectors which really need to be, I think, provided further push and impetus would be in terms of the demographic dividend which is there and available in India, especially from rural India. So if you look at India's demographic bulge, if you would like to call it, 54% is the youth. So if you look at the 54% of the youth, where do they actually live? They live in rural India. And in rural India, you need to go beyond just the white and the blue-collar work. So some of the work which is being done, like companies like whether it's Coca-Cola or any of the FMCG companies, has been to work directly with the small and medium retailers across India. So in a company like ours, what we do is per year, we train over 150,000 small and medium retailers across India. We have a number of over 750,000 presently, and we're hoping to get to another 500,000 in the next 3 to 4 years. Now, how do we do that? We work with the retailers on ground. So we have had a series of programs. One has been something called Parivartan, which started as a rural India push program where we deal directly with, the small, mom and pop shops, as we call them in India, where you train them in terms of not just finances, but how do you ensure that your, the signage is done? How do you ensure that you put the correct things on the shelves? So, that's the kind of work we've been doing. We've also done a lot of work on terms of, something called the fruit circular economy, which is we've trained over 350,000 farmers and over 1 million acres of land across India and ultra-high density plantations across 13 states, union territories. We've also worked, the fruits that we've worked across, so just to let you know, in India, Coca-Cola is the largest procurer of mangoes and sugar. And we've worked across mango, sugar, coffee, apple, oranges, lychees, and grapes. And we are continuing to do that. And why do we do this? Because what we realize is every time you open a facility with our bottlers across India, you open it in, not in the first-tier cities, not in the second-tier cities, not in the third tier. It's probably the third and the fourth. And you actually give people direct employment out there. And when you give that, let's say you give with one facility, maybe 400 to 500 people direct employment, but you create an entire ecosystem of not just distributors, retailers, transporters, but a system which needs to be trained and the capacities need to be built. The other thing I just wanted to say, taking up from what you had said, Nancy, was, in terms of the student programs, most of the companies across in India have internships, very strong internship program from the business schools across India and management schools, and even the rural management schools. So it might be a good idea to have a correlation, so like just this year, we've, in the last 3 months, we've had over, I think, 40 internships from across the top business schools in India. And we'll be taking, we'll be employing quite a few of them. But how do we do that exchange between India and US, from US to India and from India to US? That would be something really interesting to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Devyani. That's very interesting, especially the way you laid out the context of India, and where the skilling, the chunk of the skilling needs to be done. And also the cross-cutting theme which comes, which seems to recur is the traffic has to increase from India to from US to the India, in terms of students. And yeah, thank you so much. Jill, what sort of programs and skills and initiatives are you looking at to build local capacities and to sort of bring about a more, a tighter, more expansive skilling ecosystem between the two countries?
Sure, I'll get to that in a second. I also just want to say I'm very honored to be here today. I've been traveling to India over the last 17 years, and I loved hearing some of the ambassador and Atul's comments this morning. The India that I used to travel to 17 years ago is not the India of today, and it's just very exciting to see the growth, the changes in infrastructure, and I'm really enjoying my 2 years in at HCLTech. We employ more than 225,000 people, and as I said, about 75% are based in India. And we've got 25,000 people in the US with a commitment through our Rise at HCLTech program to hire 12,000 more Americans by 2026. And while we're building on a lot of the amazing programming that we've employed in India, there's really 5 key areas of focus for us as we look at attracting new talent and training and skill development. One of the first things that we look at is skill-based versus role-based training. We have an always-on training and learning and development program, and we've started a new internal job portal called Talent Exchange, so we can allow people to move around easily inside the organization, and they can continuously be developing their own customized learning plans so that they can figure out what they want their next move to be. And we're finding that that's keeping people inside the organization versus looking out. So really focused on that skills-based training. Second, like you mentioned, we are not looking traditionally at key tier 1 markets. Same thing in India. We've looked at a lot of rural areas for some of our new talent, but we are really making an investment in cities like Frisco, Texas, and Cary, North Carolina, Hartford, Connecticut, moving around the country in some of those tier 2 or tier 3 locations. And we're finding a workforce who might not have access to other tech jobs. We play in tech services and software development, and we've been very happy with the talent we're seeing in those tier 2 and tier 3 cities. The third thing we're doing is about a year ago, we launched an apprenticeship program. So we are looking for talented STEM high school graduates, employing those graduates for 1 year of an apprenticeship. When they successfully complete that first year, we agree to fund a 4-year college education. You mentioned Purdue, Nancy. We have a partnership with Purdue Global and Southern New Hampshire University. Our employees can do online or in-person training, but we're really excited about the high school talent that's coming into the organization. We are also very focused on maintaining partnerships with academia and governmental associations like USIBC. And finally, we have a huge focus on mentorship programs. For all of our new campus hires, we have a buddy program, but we've also started a program that we call Mentor Me that allows for connections to be made via an online platform to better pair our younger employees with the right mentors. So those are just some of the things that we're doing at HCLTech.
Thank you so much, Jill. That's very interesting to see where an India-based multinational is investing in the US in terms of skills and where Coca-Cola is investing in India, you know. So that's a really interesting piece. Coming back to you, Nancy, the US-India initiative for critical and emerging technologies. So that seems to be the buzzword.
Our favorite thing.
Yes, favorite
ISET.
thing, yeah. So what exactly is the ISET, and how can the industry be a part of it, you think? And how do you see that playing out in for the theme for today, which is people-to-people partnership?
Absolutely. Before I do that, I just want to say thank you to both of you, because a lot is going on in the private sector in terms of upskilling, and it's wonderful to hear. We're also looking to get your voices into our working group, so we may be coming back at you to get more information and to learn from your experience. So thanks for that. ISET, yes, ISET is one of the big focus of the US-India relationship, and as I think all of you know, it was launched this past January. I think what ISET gives us is For the first time, we have at the very senior levels of both governments, the national security advisors themselves have blessed and launched this, it's a policy framework, I would really call it, right? It gives us the policy frame in which, and instructs, I would say, all of our respective agencies and departments in both India and in the US to actually implement and make good on the commitments that are outlined in that policy framework. And so what is that policy framework? Well, it is designed to elevate and expand the technology partnership we have with India, as well as the defense industrial cooperation that we have. And it is not just about government to government. It is very much about business to business, as well as exchange and growth between our two academic institutions, our academic industry. So really it is about business, it is about higher education, and it is about governments and how we work together to do a number of things. What are those things listed in ISET? Well, it's really focusing again on creating opportunities, finding areas for growth, and for co-development, co-production, research and development, exchanges, and breaking down the barriers that prevent us from doing all of those things. And there are quite a long list of areas that the ISET framework is designed to foster that cooperation. I'm just going to highlight a few because there's quite a lot. But it looks at quantum computing and AI, defense innovation and technology cooperation, resilient semiconductor supply chains, commercial space, science, tech, engineering, and math talent development, so that STEM development you were talking about, Jill, and next generation telecommunications. And really what we're thinking about there is 5G, 6G, O-RAN. And so that's just a smattering of the things that are under the ISET hat, if you will. But business and academia were very much a part of the ISET construct from the very beginning. This was not just an add-on or a throwaway. And in fact, when it was launched in January of last year, it was USIBC that hosted a roundtable that we had 40 CEOs and members of the academic community participate in that launch. And that was deliberate to signal this wasn't just a government-to-government initiative. I want to highlight a few of the things that are happening under ISET where business and private sector engagement will be critical and is actually a focus of the work. The first one is the Indo-US Quantum Coordination Mechanism, and that's really designed to facilitate research and industrial collaboration in quantum. The second one is the US-India Civil Space Joint Working Group. And this one is really to foster more engagement between our two commercial space industries that will enable us to better partner and grow our commercial space endeavors. And then the last is Department of Commerce in March when Commerce Secretary Raimondo was in New Delhi. She signed an MOU with the government of India on semiconductors. And the focus there is really how do we build out a more resilient supply chain for semiconductors. So those are just three key areas, I think, that ISET is really doing a lot of outreach with the business community to advance our objectives. But we are always open for more creative ideas. If people in the audience have them and want to participate, let me know.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for unpacking that formidable term for us. So, Devyani, in a fast digitizing world, how are you adapting when traditional and moving from a traditional retail ecosystem to an online mode?
So Shreerupa, with the 2 years of COVID, I think life changed for everybody, not just in India, but across the world. And the handheld phone is the one which really makes everybody move. So whether you look at all our work in terms of, online to Quickline, or you look at the e-commerce aspects, the one thing we realized is when you look at our retailers, which we create, across India, most of the work is done digitally. So, we have partnerships with not just, startups, which are from your food aggregators to your e-commerce setups, but we have it all across India. And it's all to do with that handheld phone. And as you are aware, Shreerupa, at the I hope in the next 1 month, we'll be launching a very big program, as you know, with the National Skill Development Corporation. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to give too much away. And you will hear all about how we're going to enhance that entire digital aspect and create an even larger digital diaspora, specifically in terms of creating small and medium entrepreneurs, not just in the first-tier cities, but across India. Thank you.
Wow, great. Thank you, Devyani. Thank you. And I look forward to your announcement. I'm sorry, I just, very sorry. Yeah, Jill, how does the robust partnership between the India and the US, robust partnership that we have today, how does it affect your growth plans in this region specifically?
Well, I think things are extremely strong, and like Nancy said, the opportunity for massive innovation in both the US and India and that partnerial spirit is allowing us to migrate some big ideas from India to the US and vice versa. Our company at its core has an engineering mindset. And Nancy, as you were ticking off all of the key areas of tech focus, we are focused on digital engineering, cloud, AI. Those are 4 huge areas of focus for us. It's amazing that a few members of our leadership team sat in a room with Satya Nadella and members of the Microsoft leadership team in late November. And I see our partnerships with companies like Adobe and Shantanu, and just seeing this collaboration from my organization with titans across the tech industry. It's super exciting. I think we're extremely bullish. And one of the things that I'm really proud of that we're bringing over from India is this embracement of tech for good. In fact, Roshni Nadar Malhotra, our chairperson of the board, is in the US right now, and tomorrow morning she is going to be speaking to the Gartner Research Board about tech for good. And I'm so proud of what HCLTech has done across India with more than $140 million donated, impacting lives of more than 5 million people, mostly in rural environments. And we're going to be bringing over sort of the source code of our HCL Foundation programming to the US. We're going to be launching a new HCLTech grant program to also contribute to NGOs and entrepreneurs who are focused on helping us solve for climate change. So those are just a few examples of how I think these big ideas can go both ways, and I loved hearing from the Bhartia brothers. I think we have a lot of that same essence inside of HCLTech.
Thank you, Jill. I'll take that back with me, tech for good. So we have about 2 minutes, Nancy. Can I give you the last word on? So so our theme today for this summit, which is trust, resilience, and growth. How do you see these principles reflected in the US-India partnership vis-a-vis the education and skill development sectors?
Sure. So trust. The relationship with India has grown exponentially and continues to grow. And I think we are both increasingly becoming those trusted partners. And that undergirds a lot of what we're able to do, whether it's on the commercial side, whether it's in the tech side, whether it's in the transfer side, the defense side. It's all undergirded by trust. So resilience. Going back to what you just said about the COVID-19, I was smiling. If nothing else, we've all learned from COVID-19 that our supply chains, that our lives really need to be resilient, and we need to be able to diversify supply chains and have trusted, once again, partners in terms of making sure that the economy doesn't grind to a halt when the next pandemic hits or the next shock hits. And so resilience is a key part of what we're trying to do with India in terms of building out those supply chains. And growth, Well, I don't have to tell you about growth. I mean, you just have to look at the statistics in terms of India and its growth projection, both in terms of its population. It's now the most populous country in the world, 1.4 billion people, the fifth largest economy, growing fast, one of the fastest growing economies. And I would say all of that growth translates into growth for the US-India relationship. We see this relationship as truly consequential to solve the 21st century problems together, and we really look forward to doing it with all of you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to announce we've finished right on time, by the second. So thank you for this very insightful conversation, and I'm sure, like me, many people are taking back a lot from this conversation. So thank you, and thank you for being such a good audience. Thank you.